All right, Ashley, are we ready to get started? Awesome. Well, I am thrilled to welcome everyone to the first of our three-part speaker series, Wild Coastal Conservation Conversations. I'm Caroline Hayes. I am a board member for YLC. I am going to kind of operate as a little bit of a moderator today in partnership with Jasmine, who I'll introduce here in a few minutes. Before we get started, I really want to emphasize the conversations aspect of this series. Our speakers want to hear as much from everybody, and we've got a great crowd on the call today. As I know each of you want to hear from them. So questions are highly, highly encouraged. Please take full advantage of the chat window while they're speaking. If a question comes up and you want to jump in, towards the end of the hour, we're going to open things up, encourage everybody to unmute or even jump on camera. If you have any thoughts or questions that have been sparked from all of the information we're going to get today from our speakers. So a little bit of background on why Wild Coastal, why is YLC moving into this space? You know, Louisiana has lost 2,000 square miles of coastline since the 1930s and could lose an additional 4,000 square miles by the end of 50 years. It's an understatement to say that this crisis has profound implications for the people, ecology, and economy of New Orleans, South Louisiana, and truly the nation. Without our wetlands in South Louisiana, over 2 million people would have to relocate, and the way of life that has been preserved for centuries that we all love so much would be diminished. For a decade and a half, our state has taken a national leadership role in its approach to addressing the crisis, developing world-class plans to prioritize investments based on science and public input, and investing billions of dollars in the implementation of restoration and protection projects. Addressing the coastal crisis proactively not only staves off disaster, but can also be the impetus for new economic opportunities in water management and adaptation that can grow economic opportunities for everyone and ultimately bring more young leaders to our city. There's much work to be done, and it will be our responsibility as young leaders to take the baton in sustaining the coastal communities, habitats, and Louisiana culture we all treasure so much. This has been the impetus to joining forces with Greater New Orleans, Inc., the Coalition for Coastal Resilience and Economy, and the state to learn truly what we can do to protect our coast and ultimately the future of this community. Not only to learn what is going on, but through these conversations, ultimately, how can we serve as the Young Leadership Council? With all that being said, I am really excited to introduce you to a young leader who is making her mark as the Public Policy Manager for GNO Inc. With a BA in marketing from Loyola and her law degree from LSU, Jasmine is using her unique legal mind and acumen for business strategy to drive positive change on a regional, state, and truly national level. Jasmine's here today to tell us a little bit more about GNO Inc. and CCRE's role in coastal restoration and to introduce our speakers.
Thank you so much, Caroline. I was not prepared for that introduction, so thank you. I'm flattered. On behalf of GNO Inc., we just really want to thank the YLC for this opportunity, as well as the state and our other coastal partners who have made it a point to carve out time and space to be able to engage the young professionals and the young leaders of the city in the area of coastal restoration and protection. And so for those who are not aware, GNO Inc. is the regional economic development organization for the Southeast region of the state. Our mission here is really to create a region with a thriving economy and an excellent quality of life for everyone. And so as you can see based on our mission statement, coastal restoration actually fits squarely within that, right? When we think about a thriving economy and even an excellent quality of life, we truly view economic development and coastal protection as mutually dependent factors, right? So by making investments philosophically, legislatively, as well as financially in restoring the coast, we truly believe that it is the way to protect the assets and businesses of the region. While also it allows for us to look for opportunities that arise from the knowledge and expertise our region and people are gaining while tackling these challenges. And so a few years back, GNO Inc. decided to institute the Coalition for Coastal Resilience and Economy. It is CCRE, which is what Caroline referred to a few minutes ago, to really engage the business community in coastal restoration issues and create informed advocates who don't stand to economically benefit from the master plan implementation, but truly just to be champions of coastal restoration and protection in whichever spaces they're in. So through the collision rather of those objectives, as well as what Caroline has already stated, we are super excited to partner with YLC on this endeavor. And so without further ado, I'll introduce our phenomenal speakers, Charles Sutcliffe and Jacques Hebert. They are both very close friends of our house. I call on Charles maybe twice a week, if not 3 times. I'm surprised he hasn't blocked us yet, but I'm so thankful to have the opportunity to introduce both Charles and Jacques. Charles Sutcliffe is the Chief Resilience Officer for the state of Louisiana, specifically within the Louisiana Governor's Office of Coastal Activities. He's been working within that office for 9 years. To me, he is just Mr. Coastal. He coordinates closely with other state agencies, non-governmental organizations, and philanthropies as the state of Louisiana broadens its approach to managing the many implications of coastal change and really positioning the state to capitalize on all of the opportunities that may arise. He's also helping to lead the Governor's Climate Initiatives Task Force, which will make recommendations for how Louisiana can reach net zero emissions by 2050. He's a former educator in Baton Rouge and Pittsburgh, also with the Department of Human Services in Pennsylvania, as well as the Louisiana State University's Economics and Policy Research Group. He is a graduate of NYU and LSU. So super grateful that he could join us today. We have Jacques Hebert also, who is the communications manager of coastal resilience and ecosystems for the EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund. Again, a very close partner of ours. Jacques works in communications with EDF as for the Restore the Mississippi River Delta in order to raise awareness to Louisiana's land loss crisis. Caroline spoke a little bit about land loss, but our speakers will really dive into that and really give us a good foundation for what that really looks like in our state. He looks at also the far-reaching implications that land loss has on people, wildlife, and the economy. And more importantly, the restoration solutions available to address it. Jacques has worked for the National Audubon Society in Audubon, Louisiana, Mother Jones in San Francisco, Google. He is a 2018 Aspen Ideas Festival Scholar, as well as a 2018 Gambit 40 under 40 recipient. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Charles to get us started.
Okay, well, thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, YLC, for hosting us today. This is really exciting for me to be able to reach this audience, this new audience for us. You know, as everybody's been saying, this is a really important issue. It's something that I'm lucky and to be spending my working hours on, my days and nights on this issue. I think it's super important, and I'm just really glad that there's so many of you who are interested in learning more about it and trying to figure out how you can plug in. I think, as you see just from Jacques being here today, and Jasmine, and then YLC, all these different groups coming together, there really is a wide range of stakeholders that are involved in this. And I hope that you'll see the door open for you in some kind of ways as we kind of walk through kind of what the issue is and how you can hopefully get involved. So I'm going to share a little bit of my screen and just kind of walking through some slides so you can kind of see some of the progress that we've been making as a state, and hopefully we'll, but as Caroline said, please jump in if you have questions or anything along the way. And so I'm just going to get started and make sure we save enough room for Jacques to have some things to say too. So here's a map that kind of shows that introductory statistic that Caroline gave us right at the top of this thing. So this is the red map. We use this all the time. This is a composite of both all the land that we've already lost since the 1930s and all the land that we are projected to lose over the next 50 years. So together, it could be as high as 6,200 square miles of land. You can see New Orleans does okay in here if you just consider the immediate space of the city inside the hurricane levees. But if you look just outside of it, the Gulf of Mexico is going to be a lot closer to you guys from pretty much every direction there. Another thing that I don't think gets enough attention is just the coast-wide severity of this crisis. I mean, Southwest Louisiana is in real trouble if we don't start doing things differently, as are large chunks of the central part of the coast. There is a little bit of green on this map, and that's where the river is still connected to the wetlands and where it's still doing work. And so the Atchafalaya and the Wax Lake Delta continue to grow through this otherwise really gloomy scenario, as are a few places lower on the Mississippi where the river is still connected. But you know, where the land loss really becomes a human problem is when you think about the flood implications of it. And so this purple rainbow map that we have is really showing you how flood risk changes from storm-based events. So this is showing a 100-year event at year 50, what the different flood inundations would be. And so you can see lots of the coast has extremely high storm surge vulnerabilities. And this is not for the big one. Again, this is one of these 100-year events. So you can see over 15 feet in a lot of the wetland areas. You know, there's no color on the map that you want to be associated with your community or neighborhood. So even if it's 1 to 3 feet, I think that would be really devastating. And you can see how you know, by year 50, this crisis really has reached all the way in, almost you know, into the suburbs of Baton Rouge. This is not just a coastal problem. This is a problem that it's got tentacles that reaches all the way inside of Louisiana. And so, you know, what are some of the causes of this? So this is both a man-made problem and a natural problem that we're happening. And so, and the coastal problem in Louisiana really predates our like just hyper awareness of climate change, but it also is going to be made much worse by climate change as things go on. And so, some of the different factors that are causing Louisiana's coastal crisis are the natural process of subsidence. So the land is sinking. That's happening more because the levees were built to kind of keep everybody dry, but it's kind of broken that natural relationship between the river and its spring floods or its winter floods and the wetlands around it. Sea levels are rising. We've already seen that, and we expect more of that in the future. Hurricanes can destroy wetlands. They do. Hurricane Katrina alone destroyed, I think, about 250 square miles of wetlands. We've also built a lot of canals and for infrastructure and navigation throughout our marsh. That's kind of helped that salt water get in, penetrate more deeply, kind of erode around the edges. And then the oil spill obviously was horrible for the coast, and that's something that also contributed to this crisis. So all these things are happening, and again, you know, the problem, you know, in these next couple decades and in the past has largely been subsidence, but sea level rise becomes more and more of a threat as we get further and further into this century. These statistics here are quick too. This kind of gets back to what even we already mentioned in the intro, which is that this is obviously a hugely significant problem for Louisiana and the people that live here, but we have a really unique role to play in the rest of the nation's economy. So between our energy, you know, refining and production and all that, we have an incredible port system that connects products from the entire Midwest to international markets, and we kind of hold the country together through so many of these things. That all of these different assets of the state and to the nation are put at risk in some way, shape, or form by the severity of the coastal crisis. And so this is just another reason that we need to kind of take a hard look at what we can do about this. And I would say too, you know, so, and Caroline already mentioned this as well, but this is 2 million people basically who are put at risk from this crisis. This is people's homes, this is people's jobs, this is a culture that we all, you know, have grown to appreciate growing up here or living here, or maybe you just relocated here. It really is, I think everything special about Louisiana is happening in this coastal area, and this is what's all at risk. And not only that, I think it's also worth noting too that while everybody's going to be impacted, and I think the impacts are broad, it's helped us to create a really wide net for drawing assistance and supporters. but it's also going to hit the people with the fewest resources the hardest, and the most vulnerable. People who are already vulnerable are going to have a harder time adapting to all the changes that are going to come into them. And I think we shouldn't lose track of that part of this problem either. And so, what are we doing about this? So after Hurricane Katrina and Rita in 2005, the state really reorganized itself around this issue to kind of take it more seriously, to take it more, hit it more directly. And so we reorganized state government. We've got a regional governance structure that's kind of unique when you look around the country, that involves multiple state agencies, multiple representatives from the different regions around the coast. And we started developing the comprehensive coastal master plan for a sustainable coast. So the master plan kind of grows out of this Katrina response. We needed to figure out a way to integrate the changes that are happening to the ecosystem and the flood protection implications that those have. So we've put them together in one policy and one big package. And the CPRA, the Coastal Protection and Restoration Authority, has been charged with developing that master plan and implementing that master plan. We're also the lead trustee for the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So we help guide a lot of those settlement funds, about $7 to $8 billion over the next through 2032 towards restoration projects. And we are also the non-federal sponsor for big hurricane protection projects with the Corps of Engineers, like the HISDRA system in New Orleans, for example. So we have a lot of different roles there. And I would just say too, just very briefly, that CPRA doesn't do it all. So there are really kind of important limitations to what they do. They don't do rainfall events. They don't do local drainage. They don't think about riverine floods and how that impacts them. So there's a lot of stuff that still needs to be done by the local governments and other folks, people that we go out of our way to partner with. So their role is really central to a resilient coast, but it's not everything. And I think that's something I'll get to in a little bit later. So here's the master plan. The map at the top shows you the projects, kind of project perspective. It's 124 projects are inside the master plan. But what it is it's also an analytical tool that we use to really kind of approach a really complex, really important problem. It helps us, it's updated every 6 years by law. So we're currently operating under the 2017 master plan, but there's a new one underway and it will be published in 2023. It looks over a 50-year planning horizon to try to understand not only what is happening today and what are the risks, but how is it going to change over the future? We look at multiple future scenarios too. So it's not just one future that we're trying to plan for. We're trying to plan for a series of potential outcomes that we want to be prepared for, no matter kind of which way it goes. We have to look at different types of projects too. There's not a single silver bullet. So if you look on this map, you'll see all kinds of different colors and shapes and things like that. That's because we've got some places, a levee is the best approach. Other places, it's wetlands and barrier islands and sediment diversions or shoreline protection. So we've got these different tools that we use. The master plan helps us kind of evaluate the efficacy of those different tools and how to use them. And it also helps us weigh the kind of the difficult challenge of near-term benefits, because we've got people who are at risk now and every storm is scary. We've also got a long-term sustainability issue that we can't lose track of either one of those, or we won't be kind of doing our job and doing the state a service. So again, all that analysis ends up in this final list of projects that's kind of shown there. And it's really built on cutting edge science. And I think that's a really important point that I want everybody on this call to kind of take away. This is not, you can see to where if you were going to try to create a map like this from a political point of view first, it might look very different. And so if it's not just about asking folks, what do you want to do? It's about how can we understand the changes that are actually happening along the coast? How can we then, test projects, see which ones perform the best, make the very best investment that we can with state dollars to kind of, provide protection and restoration for our people. And so we've got a really complicated model that looks at how the ecosystem interacts. We're able to layer on top of that a storm surge, storm characteristics, figure out where the water goes on top of that landscape. And then we're able to add a third layer of kind of the assets, the communities, and figure out what happens when those storms hit that landscape on these communities, and then kind of understand exactly what's happening. So we use we use numerical models for all those kinds of calculations. And then we're able to add projects onto that model. So we do a big call for projects, during every master plan. We want to get new ideas from anywhere we can get them from. Then they're put into this model. So the projects are built, their performance is tested over those multiple different future scenarios. We're able to kind of compare projects, see which ones did well, which ones didn't do well, which ones succeeded no matter what the sea level rise rate was, which ones failed at different sea level rise rates, so that we actually come up with a final master plan that we kind of take to the public. And all along too, throughout this entire process, you can see this bottom gray bar, is that outreach and engagement is really important to us too. So we're constantly working with folks like Jacques, GNO Inc., federal agencies, other state agencies, trying to understand kind of how they're thinking about this and get their perspectives as we develop models, as we produce project alternatives and all those kinds of things. And so I do want to make sure that this group doesn't just think that we've got this great plan and we're not using it. So the master plan is something that has been guiding state investments for the past 15 years. And we have done an amazing amount of work, I think. I think we're all of us that work on this issue are really proud of this record. 315 miles of levee improvement, 46,000 acres of land benefited. These are the kinds of statistics that other states that are kind of maybe seem a little further ahead of us on climate or on adaptation, they don't have a track record like that we do yet of implementing projects and kind of seeing what happens. So we've done 111 projects over all 20 coastal parishes, and we have a lot more to come. And one of the ways that we kind of turn the master plan into projects is through an annual plan, and that's going to be coming up soon in the legislative session. That's just one place where we kind of interact with the legislature again as we go through this. And I think Jacques is going to refer to that in a little bit too. But I just wanted to kind of give you a sense that we are building projects. And so just a few quick examples. This is over on the southwest. The yellow line is Highway 82. And you can see it's right up against the Gulf of Mexico in a lot of places. And also right behind the highway is some really degraded marsh. And so the wrong storm could create a whole new bay in Southwest Louisiana that they probably would not be able to come back from. You wouldn't be able to kind of put it back the way it was. So CPRA came in, and over a couple of projects, we were able to rebuild the beach in front of the road. And so that protects the evacuation route. It protects the economic, flows that happen along that highway. And we also went in a few years after that, and we're able to kind of rebuild that wetland area. And so we're putting back the habitats, the natural protection for that infrastructure, and trying to create a more sustainable coast overall for this region. And so this is about $75-80 million worth of work together over these couple projects. But the projects have been getting bigger and bigger over the years. So here's another one. This is the Caminada Headlands, kind of in the early stages of the project. So this is closer to Port Fourchon, where 90% plus of the nation's of the Gulf of Mexico's oil and gas is serviced out of that port. And it used to be also home of one of the fastest receding shorelines anywhere in the country. And so again, we were able to come in with 2 different funding sources to create 13 miles of beach, just kind of restore that headland completely back to where it was. This is one of the first mega projects that we built using oil spill money. And so this was finished probably in 17 or 18 or so. I should remember, but I don't remember quite exactly. But we were able to kind of utilize National Fish and Wildlife Foundation money to kind of make a big dent out of this project. Oil spill money is also helping us do kind of a smaller scale projects, but are also just really important for keeping the coast alive as we know it today. And so this is Queen Bess Island. This is in Barataria Bay. It's one of the it was one of the last few pelican rookeries where a lot of so many birds, not just brown pelicans, but kind of use this island to reproduce. And it's just really like emblematic of Louisiana. It was heavily damaged during the oil spill. And it only had 5 acres left that were kind of suitable for nesting. And so we were able to kind of come in there with oil spill dollars and restore it. It's now 37 acres. We had a really successful nesting season this year, thanks to those improvements. And we've also started another project that's very similar on the southwest side of the state to restore an 87-acre nesting island too. So that's really exciting. So here's Queen Bess after we were done. You can see it's got a lot of cool little features too to kind of help birds at different stages of the life cycle. And yeah, so we're excited to be moving on to Rabbit Island this year. It's under construction. And so I'm going to go quickly to give Jacques plenty of time here over the next few. This is still ongoing. You know, last year we had more projects under construction than ever before. We were excited to announce $900 million of new funding opportunities for projects. So this is one project underway. It's about $160 million. It's 3 more barrier island pieces in Terrebonne Bay. We've got some of the largest marsh creation projects we've ever attempted, and that's unlike anything happening anywhere else in the country right now. So this is Lake Borgne marsh creation. This is going to be a 2,800 acre marsh creation project. It is absolutely massive. It's the kind of scale of projects that we need to kind of really make a dent in that red map that I showed you before. And it's always been the vision of the state to be able to put in projects that are this big, but we've never really had the resources to do it until these last few years. Just wish one more on that, kind of close to the New Orleans area as well, is this is a large scale Barataria marsh creation project. This is 1,400 acres. That's also going to be going into construction pretty soon. And this one's really close. I don't know if y'all can see my cursor moving too, but right about here is going to be another mega project that we're also excited to be moving forward. They're called sediment diversions. So, going back to that causes of land loss slide that I showed at the very beginning, the levees really have restricted the ability for us to use the river to build land and sustain land. And so these sediment diversions are going to be controlled gates in the river. They're going to allow us to work with the river to kind of put fresh water and sediment back into the system to kind of maintain this land over time. And so these projects are moving forward. These are just massive infrastructure projects in and of themselves, even though they have ultimately an environmental purpose. But this represents about $2 billion worth of investment. And so just these 2 projects alone, Jacques' group, EDF, helped do an economic impact study for us on this. And so this nearly $2 billion in construction expenditures is going to be a $3 billion impact for the region in terms of sales, and about over 2,000 jobs a year on average over the 7 years for the greater New Orleans region. I think that's really impressive, and just kind of really kind of to one of the points that was raised early in the introduction. Like, this really is, it's not just an existential opportunity, it is an economic opportunity. It's a way to kind of really change how people think about their relationship to the coast. That you can make a good living kind of working to make your state sustainable in the future. Just to kind of wrap up, the state, we are doing so many other things besides just implementing the master plan. From my perspective as the Chief Resilience Officer in the Governor's Office, we're thinking about the long term and thinking about where do we go from here, what happens next. And so this map was first produced for the 2017 master plan, and it shows all the land we can gain with a $50 billion investment at the end of 50 years. And I think what jumps out more so than the green is the red that's still there. And so there's a lot of coast that's still in trouble. We've got to think about ways to bring in more voices to addressing this problem. I'm working with other state agencies to figure out how they can help reconsider their missions in light of this problem. And we're starting to be looking more proactively at the mitigation side. So how can the state address greenhouse gases that are contributing to the sea level rise portion and some of the hurricane elements there too. So we've got a project called the Adaptive Governance Initiative that's really helping us improve our adaptation. On the greenhouse gas emissions side, we've got a climate initiatives task force that, it could be a whole nother presentation just on that. We're working on the blue carbon opportunities. So what are all these wetlands we want to restore? How does that help sequester carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases? And then we're also kicking off in the spring pretty soon a process with BOEM that will help get offshore wind leasing in the Gulf of Mexico. We're really excited about that. And so I know I talked a little longer than I wanted to, Jacques. I hope you've still got plenty of time to kind of say a bunch of good things. I'm gonna stop my share and let you switch over.
Sure. Thanks, Charles, and great to connect with all of you. I'll just share my screen as well and get my presentation going. While I'm doing that, I just want to thank YLC and GNO Inc. for making this opportunity possible for us to talk about the important issue of coastal land loss and the solutions available to address it. I'm also very honored to be following Charles and have so much respect for him and the work that everyone's doing at CPRA and the Governor's Office of Coastal Activities. And EDF convened a meeting of different chief resilience officers from around the country, folks that are similar to Charles in North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Virginia. And it was just so great to hear Charles and his team present about all the great work that they're doing in Louisiana, and really the other states learning so much from Louisiana about how they've been successful in this pursuit. So as someone who grew up on the coast in Plaquemines Parish, just south of New Orleans, and then came back 6 years ago to do this work, it was really a moment of pride for me to see other states learning so much from the work that Charles and others are doing. So just really quick introduction. My name is Jacques Hebert. As Jasmine mentioned, I work in communications for Environmental Defense Fund. My primary role is focused on a coalition called Restore the Mississippi River Delta. So we are a coalition of 5 NGOs, 3 national organizations, Audubon National Wildlife Federation, and 2 in-state organizations, Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana, as well as Pontchartrain Conservancy, which was formerly the Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation. So we've been formally a coalition for almost 15 years. We're funded by the Walton Family Foundation, and our focus is on advancing large-scale coastal restoration projects, similar to what Charles mentioned from the Coastal Master Plan, and to do that to protect the region's people, wildlife, and jobs. So Charles hit on this, but of course we understand the importance of our coast in so many ways, both to the economy, to people and their livelihoods, 2 million plus people that live in the coastal zone, but also the economic importance, both in terms of protecting existing assets, whether that's the port, or just other businesses, but also the economic opportunity that exists from doing this work. So that's something we really focus on a lot in terms of when we talk about what's at stake. So I really want to talk through kind of how we make the case for the coast as a coalition, and really at the end focus on how you can get involved and tee up some upcoming opportunities for engagement. So Charles alluded to this, but one of the kind of foundational principles of what we focus on in terms of why our coast is so vital is based on a concept that was developed by Dr. John Lopez of Lake Pontchartrain Basin Foundation following Hurricane Katrina. And this is that we need to restore the coast that protects us. I think Katrina was a terrible wake-up call that levees alone are not enough, right? And that we need our barrier islands as our first line of defense. We need our marshes and swamps to absorb shocks from storms as well as sea level rise. And we need all of that in front of the levees to ensure their success over time and in the face of more intense storms and sea level rise. So we really focus on this multiple lines of defense as being critical to why we're doing the work we're doing to protect coastal Louisiana communities and infrastructure and economy. I just wanted to highlight this really quickly. Our organization does polling, usually annually, just to gauge where voters are in terms of their sentiments around the coast. Overwhelmingly, across year after year after year, polls indicate that Louisiana voters care deeply about coastal wetlands. They want their elected officials to prioritize addressing coastal land loss. They feel that coastal land loss will directly impact them soon. So that's 77% statewide. So that's not even people just in the southern Louisiana, that's going up into Shreveport and Monroe, and people there that understand the economic importance of our coast. And people want it as a form of protection, as well as, they want leaders to find existing funding for coastal Louisiana and for restoring the coast. They realize we don't have enough and more needs to be done there. So we do a lot of advocacy on the funding side, both at the state and federal levels. So in terms of our organization, so we are a coalition of 5 different nonprofits. We are very much based in science. We have a team of scientists that are doing they're doing analysis on the ground. They're reviewing science and literature, and that forms the basis of our policy positions and a lot of the work we do. We have policy experts in state and in DC that are working at both state and federal levels. We have a team of community outreach folks that are doing kind of usually under normal circumstances in-person events and working directly with communities that are on the front lines of coastal land loss, as well as folks that are doing actual hands-on conservation through swamp restoration plantings, oyster shell recycling, and more. We focus a lot of our efforts. Charles mentioned the Coastal Master Plan. Our scientists kind of went into the Coastal Master Plan and recognizing that Louisiana does not have all the funding it needs at this moment to implement the Coastal Master Plan in full, we wanted to understand what are the key restoration projects that are vital to be implemented now as soon as we can with the funding that we have from the BP oil spill settlement. And so our team of scientists identified about 18 different projects. They're a mix of restoration projects, everything from marsh creation to sediment diversions, hydrologic restoration. And a lot of our focus centers on advocating and advancing those projects through science, through policy, and also engaging communities in the process as these projects move forward. Charles mentioned the Mid-Barataria and Mid-Breton sediment diversions. These are massive, large-scale restoration projects that are taking years to implement. So that's one of the challenges around just communications and keeping people engaged is, you want people to be directly involved and engaged in the process, but these projects can sometimes take years to implement just given the scale. So a lot of our work is trying to keep people engaged through that process. Of course, I hit on the economic and kind of environmental reasons why the coast is so important. But, Charles mentioned the culture. It's a way of life. It's, home to our wildlife and our communities and all of these things. And so, that is something that we really focus on and not losing sight of what's at stake to people today in their lives and people that are directly impacted by coastal land loss and hurricanes. I had the pleasure of working with some filmmakers from Encompass Films, and they produced a series of short documentaries called Last Call for the Bayou that really focused on 5 stories of people that are living and confronting land loss in some way, living and working on the coast. And these were shown at film festivals around the country, and then they were distributed last year by the Smithsonian channel. So I just wanted to play this, if it works, if that's okay, just because I think it really does a great job highlighting what's at stake. So I highly encourage you to check out those films if you haven't. Last Call for the Bayou at the Smithsonian channel. You can find them online, but they're really powerful showcase of what's at stake and really what we're fighting to accomplish. And they also feature kind of the solutions and what's needed to restore the coast. I wanted to touch really briefly on some of the various ways that we bring perspectives to life and help make the case for the coast. There's a whole range of things that we do and ways that you can get involved. We had this campaign, Restore the Coast, Protect Their Future. A few years ago, we ran a spot locally for the Super Bowl, the one that we expected the Saints to go to and they were robbed of. But nonetheless, we had a beautiful, very compelling ad that played that featured, the kids of our coast and really what's at stake to their future. From that, we were able to do a whole campaign and get over 1,000 people from all over the state saying, like, this is what the coast means to me. This is why it needs to be protected. You can see one example there from Harry in New Orleans. And we developed those into kind of books that we shared with the legislators to say, look, along with our polling, and these stories, like your constituents care about this issue, you need to prioritize it. And it was a powerful call to action. I'll briefly play that spot.
Zach, unfortunately, we can't hear.
So that was just one example of a campaign we did. And really it's underscoring that, with coastal issues, we sometimes don't always see it today unless there's like a hurricane, which of course this past season was very frightening in a lot of ways. But, we want to make the case that what we're doing is also about protecting future generations, protecting the way of life, the economy, the natural resources that we all depend on and that comprise Louisiana's coast and our region. So that was kind of one way that we did that. But I want to focus on how you can make a difference. I know this is something that YLC is really, wanting to be more involved in with its members, and we're very grateful. And there's no shortage of opportunities for folks to get involved. I mean, there are a few ways, from being a coastal spokesperson, we're always looking for people who, like Jasmine was saying, CCRE is not just people that directly benefit from the Coastal Master Plan, but they understand what's at stake in coastal land loss. Same thing here. We want perspectives from a variety of people that live in and around New Orleans to talk about why the coast matters to them, to consider doing, videos, opinion pieces at the right moment, being on our podcast, any of those things to just share your voice and perspective and kind of stand up for the coast. I think there's also an opportunity to be a project advocate. So as these projects move forward, they go through various regulatory and legal and permitting reviews. They have public meetings, and we need people to stand up in those meetings and say, this project is important for our future, I support it, and I encourage you to move forward with it, both in terms of implementing the project and also funding. Being a policymaker champion, where our team is regularly hosting meetings with state legislators. We've done fly-ins to DC, and elected officials, whether they're in-state or congressional, need to hear from you and understand that this is an issue that you prioritize and you want them to do as well. And then you can always get your hands dirty, get out there on the coast, help restore parts of our swamps by doing tree plantings, working with our partners, Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana, as part of their oyster shell recycling program. They engage, I think, over 30 restaurants in New Orleans. They collect the shells from those restaurants, and then they use them to create artificial reefs that they then deploy into our coastal wetlands to help protect areas and prevent erosion. So you can get involved directly in that way. And then just wanted to tee up some upcoming opportunities. So in March, Charles alluded to the Mid-Barataria sediment diversion. We're expecting the Army Corps of Engineers to release an environmental impact statement, a draft environmental impact statement, as well as the TIGs, the NERDA folks that oversee funding for the project, will release a restoration plan. Both of those documents will be open for public comment for 45 to 60 days. And we want people to share their perspectives, why the project's important, why it's important that projects like these move forward. So that's a near-term opportunity to get directly involved on a critical cornerstone project for Louisiana's coast. We also have our legislative session. Charles alluded to the Coastal Annual Plan that's up before the legislature every year. And we have to go in and make the case for why that funding is so critical to the coast. But there are other legislative priorities that come up, and we're always looking for people to be champions and connect directly with their legislators. I mentioned sharing your voice, sharing your perspective. We have opportunities to do storytelling, kind of like I alluded to, but just to showcase how important the coast is to such a variety of people. And then 2 events that are coming up. Our events have changed, like most folks, just given everything that's going on, but these are 2 great virtual events. Our Coalition to Restore Coastal Louisiana is doing a celebration this Friday, in support of their oyster shell recycling program. You can go there, you'll have fresh, delicious Louisiana oysters delivered to your doorstep, and you'll be able to enjoy some music and other entertainment virtually and safely. And then we have our 4th annual Cook-Off for the Coast, which is usually down in St. Bernard Parish at Dockville Farms in partnership with the Marrow Foundation. That will also be virtual, but nonetheless will feature a lot of great chefs and others who are wonderful advocates for Louisiana's coast. So those are some near-term opportunities. Of course, you're more than welcome to get in touch with me at any point if you would like to get involved directly. I mentioned this to the folks at YLC and Jasmine, but at some point when it's safe to do so, we'd love to host something out on the coast, kind of a boat tour like we usually do, so you can see directly how these these issues intersect with the coastal areas right outside of New Orleans, and really get a strong understanding of the multiple lines of defense and all of that I spoke about. You can sign up at our newsletter, MississippiRiverDelta.org/get-involved, and that's another way that we'll keep you updated on upcoming opportunities. So with that, I will stop sharing, and I know we probably have are wanting to do some Q&A and discussion. So thank you again.
Yes, so now it looks like we've got about 10 minutes that we can open up the floor to anybody on the call to unmute, turn your cameras on, jump in. I can tell from the chat there's lots of really thoughtful questions on your minds. So let's take advantage of Charles and Jacques while we've got them.
I have a question. Sorry, they're mowing my lawn right this second, of course. But so I was looking at some of the price tags of those projects, and of course, given the scale, makes sense. But how self-sustaining are those? Like, what's the lifespan? Like, when would you need to reinvest in that same area again?
So that's a great point. You bring up kind of 2 points there. One, the master plan does kind of give each of these types of projects a different lifespan. And so a marsh creation project that's not close to a diversion might last for 20 years, but we have seen through modeling that a marsh creation project that can be paired with a sediment diversion can last up to twice as long. And so I think there are considerations that are really important, because the natural state of things is sinking and sea level rise is going up. And so you're totally right that this is going to be an ongoing investment for the state to kind of keep the coast, at a size that we can actually manage it. So that's a really important. And the other thing, kind of on the other side of that, is where's all this money coming from? And so, right now, I mentioned the Deepwater Horizon oil spill is kind of the major funding stream, but that is going to run out in about 2032. Those funds we'll have received all the funds. It might take us another year or two to kind of spend them all down. But after that, the funding picture is really uncertain. We've got a few funding streams that'll still be around, but the scale of the program won't be what it is today. This is really kind of we're kind of firing on all cylinders. We've got as much money as we can spend in a year, kind of coming in the door and going out the door. It's really going to change, if we don't find a new funding stream come 2032, hopefully before.
Hi, Charles. I kind of asked in the chat just from a federal perspective with the importance of the Mississippi River. Do you feel like there's the potential for more federal funds maybe to come in and, take the place of those BP funds, or is it just a battle to get that into?
Everything's a battle, and thanks for bringing that up. I did see that in the chat and didn't get a chance to get there. I mean, we've looked at, it's part of the case that Jacques trying to make with all the different groups he touches. It's the case that we try to make with the federal delegation all the time, is that you're right. Like those river levees were not designed to keep the Gulf of Mexico out. They were designed to keep the river in. And so they're not, there's a sustainability issue there with the Mississippi River, but trying to put a dollar value on that, or trying to kind of create the narrative in just the right way that's going to break through all the other issues that folks are dealing with, particularly in Washington, has been a challenge. It's something that we're not giving up on it. We're continuously doing it. We just haven't struck gold just yet on that, but we are working better and better with the Army Corps of Engineers, so that when they're getting funding streams, even if it's just for operations and maintenance, kind of keeping that river dredged, that we're connected with them, so that as much of that material can be beneficially used to grow wetlands as possible. We're doing that kind of stuff, but there hasn't been a way to kind of directly tie the shipping channel to coastal restoration. But we're thinking about it, open to it, just trying to figure out the right way to do that in a way that's appropriate. And
I think it's a great question, especially since in a lot of ways, Louisiana has had a head start for all the wrong reasons in terms of, getting this work done, putting funding towards these science-based projects. One of the things that's really beneficial to Louisiana is it has this very robust science-based coastal master plan that it can point to whenever opportunities arise for funding. Other states are kind of catching up, but at the same time, other states are catching up, right? So there's more competition. You're seeing places like Miami, Virginia, North Carolina, et cetera, starting to go for the same pools of funding. So we do have to make the case for why Louisiana's valuable beyond, just our immediate area and making those connections, whether it's upriver to other Midwest states or other coastal states. And a lot of our funding has been just, that's the nature of this type of funding. It's post-disaster funding or recovery funding. And so trying to make the case in DC as well for proactive investments in these priorities, restoration, resilience, and how that saves money over time for the government. It's a tough case to make, but we're hoping to make headway there. And we'll see what happens with this upcoming, administration and Congress.
And while Kevin's got us thinking about the river too, I think it really does set Louisiana apart, not just because it's this, important national treasure and national economic engine that people are going to care about. It's also the biggest restoration tool that anybody has. Like Miami doesn't have a Mississippi River to divert and to build wetlands to keep sea level rise out of downtown. They just don't have that tool. And so Louisiana is, in some senses, at least Southeast Louisiana, is really lucky to have this giant sediment source that we can kind of continuously build wetlands with, if we're able to use it. And that's what we're testing that out where we know that's what makes the most sense. These two sediment diversions that are on the way are going to be the first big projects that tap into that potential.
This is Phil Gunn. This may be for Jacques, but maybe Christine. I know that when we formed at GNO Inc., the Coalition for Coastal Resilience and Economy, we kind of meandered a while, but I think when we first developed traction with our leadership group in GNO Inc. and legislators was when Restore and some of the other organizations hosted aerial boat and other actual visits so that people who had an interest or who had a desire to learn more actually saw the before and after impacts of some of the projects, et cetera. And I know we're in the time of COVID and that takes some funding too to have these things, but Jacques and Christine, I don't know, and maybe it's Jasmine, as you expand the interest in the YLC group, is there any opportunity for or a plan to have some aerial or boat or actual visits? Because I think that was very insightful and I think really created the traction of people who were interested and were willing to do something.
I think that's an excellent point, and so much of what we focus on, because this stuff can get, wonky and overwhelming and overly technical really fast, and it's hard to see the direct connection to your lives. Is to do to show people rather than telling them. And one of the ways we've been able to do that successfully is through these boat and flyover tours in kind of small planes. And we partner with an organization called South Wings, which is a wonderful nonprofit organization of volunteer pilots. And they'll take people up out of the Lakefront Airport or Belle Chase, and we'll go over the coast and you'll see areas that have lost tremendous amount of land and areas that are actually gaining land because they're reconnected to the river. And we've done that with legislators, business leaders, and others. And it's so has such a huge impact. There's one moment in the flight where you're flying down river and you just see wetlands all around you, and some of it's wetlands that have been lost, some of it's wetlands that are gaining. The plane turns at the mouth of the river and you see the mouth of the river and just New Orleans in the background. And it's just this aha moment that people have where they're like, oh my gosh, that is all that's in between us and the Gulf, right? So hugely powerful and impactful. South Wings is not doing flights currently. They're open to doing kind of photography, and we're trying to think through, we've done 360 videos and those sorts of things to try to bring that experience to more people. But certainly once it's safe to do so, again, we want to get as many people up on planes and boats as possible to help make the case and really show what we're talking about. So thank you very much for bringing up that point.
I'll jump in here as well. Thank you, Phil, another CCRE member who's been a huge asset to all of this work. YLC does have plans to hopefully, as things open back up and it becomes safe to do so, to get out there and to see everything firsthand. So we're really starting with these conversations as a way of learning. We're then going to organize tours with all of these fantastic leaders that have engaged in this initiative, with the hopes of getting out there and seeing, and then ultimately as an organization to band our membership together and to really think about what it is that we can do with that information and that insight. So with that being said, I just want to say again, an enormous thank you to Charles and Jacques for your time today, to Jasmine, who's done an immense amount of coordination to pull this together, to GNO Inc. and CCRE for the work that you've done up to this point and continue to do. My biggest takeaway from all of this is just how many voices, minds, and hands it's going to take to make the kind of impact that we're going to need to make. And, our vision with YLC as an organization is to be the platform for young leaders to really build stronger communities through positive change. And so I think we have an enormous opportunity to do that. So through these conversations, I hope that we're able to spark some interest to really provide a solid foundation of knowledge. Thank you everybody to tuning in. We have a really unique opportunity for our membership. So if you are a YLC member, we're going to have a coffee talk with Charles tomorrow morning, which is really another chance to dig in deeper to some of these burning questions that you have, to pick Charles's brain coming off of this conversation. And those will continue throughout the series. So mark your calendars. Our next lineup of speakers will be occurring. We're going to have another session like this on Wednesday, February 24th, with a coffee talk with Charles following that on the 25th. Be on the lookout in the mark. We're going to continue to promote this. And please spread the word. We'd love to get more people tuning in. These are free, open to the public, and we really want to expand this outreach and continue to help both Charles and Jacques and all of the leaders in place to do that. So thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. This is great. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. This was
Thank
great.
you, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you.
Guys, it was great.
Bye, guys.